Tina Ragland, and thank you all for joining us. We're certainly excited to be a part of the conversation. I lead DEI and learning development at Pacific Life Insurance, and I'm absolutely honored to sit at this table and be a part of the conference. But most importantly, I'm also really happy to be sharing the space with an amazing partner and champion in DEI, and is now a part of the Pacific Life team and supporting our DEI journey. So I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. So I'll turn it over to CF.
Thank you so much, Tina. And again, I am a CF Younger. I am the DEI program manager for Pacific Life. I've been with the organization a whopping 4 months now. So it is no longer, according to Tina, I'm no longer new. I'm not a newbie anymore, but I have some years of experience in the DEI space as well as operations, but I'll get into that more as I talk about the work in the DEI space. But thank you. Thank you all for being participants, and hopefully everyone will be engaged and ask some pointed questions. We are eager to hear what you have to say, and we are also very privileged to have the opportunity to present to you today. Back to you, Tina.
Thank you. So today, CF and I just really wanted to have a conversation and share some of our experience, both at Pacific Life and prior lives, in the insurance industry, and some of the efforts that's been made to build a more diverse workforce and inclusive culture in support of the journey that we're on. So we're going to talk about some inclusive leadership pieces. We're going to talk about some of the milestones and achievement that we've made as an organization, and some of the commitments from our senior leaders, which if you're on this call, I'm sure you know it starts at the top. So as we think about, building a diverse workforce within the insurance industry, it's not a new effort, right? This is a conversation that's been taking place for years now. The last couple of years, I have seen more of a joint effort and focus from organizations and supporting agencies. Pacific Life, we've certainly embraced partnership, and we've been committed to being an industry participant as part of our DEI journey. However, it started with us really taking the opportunity to sit back and listen to our employees. And so we had some listening sessions, which led to us building an enterprise inclusion council before we even went out to build a strategy. So as we thought about building a diverse workforce, one of the things that we wanted to do is put laser focus on our culture. And how do we create a culture of inclusion and psychological safety where people felt like they belonged in a space before we even implemented any type of workforce strategy. However, one of the things that we also did was look at our workforce strategy and how we can incorporate some key just initial awareness points for hiring managers so that they can build a competency around DEI as well. So CF brought a unique perspective to the conversation and to our work, and he has both a business view and a DEI view. So CF, can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done in support of both the business side, which you have tons of experience in the insurance industry, and as a DEI practitioner?
Absolutely, and thank you, Tina. So I have spent probably nearly 25, 26 years in the insurance industry, starting out in operations in the claims organization for a major carrier. And then I was asked to move from that area into DEI, into the DEI space. So working very closely with creating and establishing business unit councils, working very closely with our external organizations, building relationship with partner organizations, example, National Black MBA, the local chapters around there, and a host of other non-community organizations and the like. So really, it was really, and I took it as a three-prong approach. How do we make sure that internally that we are right, that we're doing the right things, and that we see diversity, equity, and inclusion as a business imperative? So working very closely with our different business units across the organization. Secondly, how do we build relationships with the community? Again, working with nonprofit organizations, things of that nature, building nationwide brand and building the brand in the communities in which we live, work, and serve. And then thirdly, how do we make sure that our agency force is in tune to the strides that we're trying to make in the DEI space? So again, looking holistically, our underwriting the product, we had a ways to go in the organization back when I started back in 2005, 2006. It was trial by learning, if you will, a lot of baptism by fire. But again, I think the organization grew as we had developed more diversity champions. I know Tina talked about having a diversity champion. Well, as you know, in the DEI space, it takes a village, and it takes a lot of people talking it up and making sure that we are sticking to our objectives, and we're making sure that everyone understands and have a sense of belonging within the organization. So we'll talk more about inclusive leadership later, but again, just wanted to touch base on that. And also another component of my working in the insurance industry is I worked in the multicultural marketing as well. So worked very closely with national organizations, American Red Cross, National Fire Protection Agencies, Nickelodeon, everybody that had like-minded thoughts with our organization, we partnered with just to make sure that our reach and our diversity components were in line with other organizations. So again, really appreciated the time spent in the DEI space, and really excited about being a part of Pacific Life and hoping to shape and move the barometer forward with Pacific Life in the DEI space. Tina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, CF. One of the conversations that we've had, CF, a few times recently is around, how long have we heard the question, where are they? How do we reach this diverse population to increase the candidate pools? And I know within Pacific Life, one of the things that we've done is how do we equip our leaders to think differently, to reframe their thoughts? And we put together a learning journey to be able to support our leaders hearing more concepts around DEI, checking in on their own biases, so that as they're going through the hiring process, they have a new way of thinking through that process. And one of the things that you've shared in some of our conversations has really been around tapping into the right level of partnership. And you talked a little bit about that just a few moments ago. But what was like the number one thing that you saw to be able to help build different candidate pools, and some of the work that you're doing with our team that you're bringing to Pacific Life that you think have been most successful for you, so that organizations can maybe have one or two pointers that they can take back with them to be able to implement within their organizations as they look to build a more diverse candidate pool?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tina. And I think for me, the big win is coming in with an open mind and recognizing that we need to move away from role incongruency to role congruency, and that is, what is the right fit? We need to look at expanding our definition of what is the fit, especially for insurance, being such a technical industry. But again, we need to understand that that we need to think more broadly as to our recruiting efforts. So I've been working with our talent acquisition team about that very same thing, is thinking outside of the box about what is a typical insurance person. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And it comes from all shapes and sizes and thoughts and dimensions and so on and so forth. So so for me, it's having them look outside, look at organizations that they wouldn't typically think about, whether it's teaching associations or again, just thinking broadly, and having diverse perspective is another major point there throughout the interview process, making sure that we are not, as difficult as it is, that we're not demonstrating unconscious biases as it relates to potential candidates or candidates during the interview process. So again, the major thing is just having them think outside of the box.
That's great. Thank you. Well, see, if I know you and I can talk about this stuff all day long, and we have, but how about we take a couple of questions? Do we have any questions in the chat?
Well, since we're a small group, can I ask a question outside the chat?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So this is Pam. So one of the things that I hear a lot, one, insurance is a tough industry to drive change in, of any type of change. But how do you, get the leadership behind, a DEI strategy or major initiative when, and they're not traditionally thinking that, DEI is a program and not a institutionalized initiative that should change culture. What are some, if you could share with us maybe some of the strategic things that you guys had to do, no particular order, to be able to get, the true listening of your senior leaders to help you position for accountability and the kind of change?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pam, and one that I think most chief diversity officers or those individuals who are leading diversity, it's also a challenge. And, we started our journey like a lot of organizations in 2020 when the world stopped and watched as a Black man was being sat on in the neck until he died. And I think that was a wake-up call for all of us to have the conversation. However, when I was approached to lead the effort at Pacific Life, I wanted to make sure there was a level of commitment and authenticity and have a real conversation about where we were as an organization, and that this was just not a moment, but this could be some sustainable actions that we could truly make as an organization. And that leadership commitment started with our leaders signing the CEO Action Pledge, and many of you may be familiar with that. But beyond just signing a piece of paper, what were we going to do to make sustainable change? And it started with us really getting real about where we were as an organization and having those conversations with our CEO and the team at the top to say what's acceptable to us. And here's where we are, but where do we want to be? And it's really bringing in that level of courage to have the right conversations, but also encouraging our leaders to have the right level of courage so that they can show up in a space that's uncomfortable for them. They can be vulnerable. And again, we'll talk a little bit about inclusive leadership, but it really started about really being real about where we were. And as leaders of DEI, it's important to have those conversations so that organizations can really confront the reality of their space. Otherwise, you jump into a lot of tactics and initiatives that aren't sustainable. CF, would you add anything?
I agree with you 110%, Tina. I think that what I've learned over my journey is you have to meet people where they are. We are constantly in change mode, and we just assume that our leaders are going to take hold and grab hold. I was listening to an interview with the CDO of MetLife, and she basically said that there's a third of the organization, as far as leaders, that are actually gung-ho diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's another third that are curious, and then there's a third that just don't get it. And so they try to focus on that 2/3 of the leadership to try to get them to become diversity champions. And I'm not ready to throw a percentage of where we are as far as Pacific Life is concerned. I do know that in my 4 months, I've been on the phone with extensively with leaders that are asking the question, how can I help? And that is major for me. How can I help? What do I need to do for my organization? So they're asking the right questions, and we're Tina and I and Andrea, who's another colleague of ours, we're trying to make sure that our strategies are aligned, of course, with the business objectives, and we are also very diligently on trying to make sure that we're holding everyone accountable for the actions within their particular business units. And I think that's one of the major strategies, is just making sure that we're having a conversation, that they are amenable to what we're trying to do from a DEI standpoint, and that they also leading the charge, because again, they're casting a shadow. And so their direct reports and their employees are looking to them for guidance and direction. And they want to be able to be in an environment where they can bring their authentic selves to the organization, where they feel like they belong. And it's very, very important that the immediate manager and their senior managers, senior leaders are on board with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, that's good. And I think when you think about that accountability piece, another conversation that we've had within our organization is, how do you measure it? How do you measure your efforts? How do you measure success in that space? And, the fear of most organizations, are you going to put these quotas in place, right? Which may have unintended consequences. And so one of the things that we've talked about as an organization at Pacific Life is, how do we measure engagement? How do we measure belonging? And then how do we continue to listen to the voice of the employee? Now, that does not mean we won't have focus areas when it comes to workforce diversity. We absolutely do. But a part of that process is also ensuring that our leaders and our talent acquisition team, who they've just done an amazing job at preparing themselves to be consultants in the DEI space and asking the tough questions, looking at candidates very differently, so that we're increasing our candidate pools, a diverse candidate, building larger diverse candidate pools. So that accountability piece and holding people accountable. But one of the things, we're very, I would say we're at the middle of the road on our journey. So this is a new one for us. But one of the most recent accomplishments that we have a business strategy, something we call the 5Ds. And through the voice of our Inclusion Council and members of our employee base, they asked, why don't we have a 6D for diversity? And the leadership team listened to them. What that did is now starting to change the conversation when it comes to accountability, because now it's on people's performance reviews, evaluations. We're embedding it into our programs, practices, and policies from an HR perspective. It's now becoming real to our strategy as a business. And in addition to, each of our divisions are partnering with us and members of our Inclusion Council to put together different business strategies, so that DEI is not a separate thing that sits over here on the side, but it's a part of who we are. And that leads to greater accountability as well. So see, if one of the questions that we have is around building and creating inclusive leaders within the organization. And we recently had an amazing conversation about it, the traits of inclusive leaders. Can you talk a little bit about those and some that you've shared recently?
Yeah, absolutely, Tina. I think it's important that we kind of lay some foundation as to where the six signature traits of inclusive leadership comes from. And you spoke to COVID and also George Floyd and things of that nature. So we know that the world is changing. There are some major shifts that are taking place that requires managers to leave that traditional leadership and transition into inclusive leadership. One is our diversity of markets. Our markets are changing. There are more and more emerging markets that are developing: Indonesia, South Africa, Russia, China, Philippines, so on and so forth. So a lot of those areas of the world are now becoming big business. And so organizations are becoming more global and trying to reach out to those emerging markets. What's happening there is that with those emerging markets, there are people from different backgrounds and diversities and ethnicities that are also joining organizations or looking to join organizations. So we have that shift. Also, diversity of customers. The demographics are changing. We know that that by 2045, the white group will be the minority. They will not be the majority. So we know that the ask and what consumers are asking for will change. Thirdly, diversity of ideals. With digital technology becoming at the forefront, is very important that we have innovation involved, and organizations are really churning to try to find ways to be more innovative, more competitive. And so we have all this diversity of thought that's coming in, which is the last major shift is diversity of talent. Because we have so many diverse people that are coming into the United States, and because of emerging markets, we have diversity of thought, which is huge. So those are the reasons that if you are still traditional in thinking, you're not going to be successful. Inclusive leadership involves 6 major traits, and that is commitment. Do you have a commitment to be an inclusive leader and to the DEI efforts? Courage. Do you have the courage to speak out when one of your peers is not on board with diversity, equity, and inclusion, or if they're demonstrating a climate of not being inclusive to their peer group or to their associates? Cognizance of bias. We know that this thing between our ears called our brain produces or takes in about 11 million bits of information per second. However, we only process 40 bits consciously. So 99.999 is based on our unconscious bias. And we have to recognize that when we are experiencing that, when we're making quick reactions, we have to ask ourselves, hold on a second, Am I stereotyping, or am I truly making the right decision? And so cognizance of our bias is very, very important. The next thing is curiosity, making sure that you're being very curious about lenses outside of yours, to make sure that everyone is being able to speak freely, bring their ideas, and for you as a leader to make sure that you understand that there are different perspectives that can get to the end objective. Cultural intelligence, making sure that you understand cultures outside of yourself. And then the last thing is collaboration, making sure that you bring in a bunch of diversity of thought. And we know that diverse teams are outperform homogeneous teams, because of the diversity of thought and bringing different perspectives in. So, Tina, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Those are things that we're looking at as far as inclusive leadership. And it's going to be a must for our leaders within the organization to take on these traits, to perfect these traits so that our associates feel like they belong, that they are valued and appreciated, and they are part of the team so they can bring their authentic selves to the organization and bring those innovative ideas as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's great. One of the parts of that we've talked about when it comes to diversity of thought is a lot of organizations lean into that space when they're uncomfortable thinking about the global world and diverse workforce, right? That make up different cultures and races and backgrounds. There should not be a diversity of thought to exclude a global mindset and different cultures and backgrounds. So I think we need to make sure we point that out as well when we talk about that global piece and that diversity of thought piece. So one of the questions is around integrating DEI when leaders are positioned for a great change. And as you know, even at Pacific Life, but the world is just changing and transforming. And every day our leaders are being asked, both from our employees, externally, from our customer base and potential employees, for many things within the organization. They have different priorities and initiatives that's happening. So one of the things that we've done as an organization is put together different learning journeys, integrating and embedding different learning opportunities for our leaders to take on so that they can feel that they have support in building this diverse culture and background, and making sure that they feel like there's a partnership. However, there's still goes back to that level of accountability and helping them understand how DEI plays into the change factor. But I think the point you made about the global workforce and the rising of a global workforce is really important to that part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you think about, there are 17 of the top 25 metropolitan areas, research has shown that there are more immigrants in white collar jobs than there are in low wage paying jobs. So the demographics are definitely changing. Research is showing that there are more people entering the work world that are from immigrant descent. And so we have to make sure that we're able to relate, to make sure that we're able to bring them in, make sure that they feel like they belong to the organization and so forth. So very, very important that not just in the insurance industry, but across the board, all industries, make sure that they grab onto that.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, within the insurance industry, there's a lot of opportunity to get involved. I know that the ACLI has some efforts that's going on. The Coalition on Equity and Wholesaling, it has an effort to bring organizations together to help build out more diverse workforce in certain parts of the insurance industry. So I would encourage you all to reach out and see what's available. I can't believe that we are almost out of time. This has been a great conversation. I hope if it was just one thing that each of you had the opportunity to glean some insights, but maybe we can take just one more quick question if there's any other questions out there. If not, I would like to thank Pam.
Oh, I have one more quick question.
Oh, go for it, Pam.
Real quick. So are you guys doing anything around apprenticeships? We see that as a leading practice that insurance companies are beginning to lean in. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, that's a great question. We are not at this time. It is a conversation that we just started to have and consider. It would be something new for us, however, but definitely as we think about building the actuarial base and some of the more challenging roles within our organization, it's definitely an opportunity for us to consider it. Well, thank you all. And Pam, thank you for being a leader in DEI and for allowing us to sit with your tribe today and spend some time just sharing a little bit of nuggets. And see if any closing comments from you.
No, just keep striving. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a sprint; it's a journey. So if you are in that space or desire to be in that space, just understand that. And it is so exciting with all of the change that's taking place. But just understand to pace yourself. Do not knock the door down. Meet people where they are, and just keep on striving.
Yeah, I shared with a group this week. I said, at the end of the day, I know this can be very challenging work and we can get exhausted with it, but just recall and remember that you're impacting the lives of someone that may follow you. So stay encouraged. But thank you all for your time and attention today, and really hope you can take something away from our conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.